this grand sacrifice of life for political theater. There was an imperative to show progress, an imperative to show success on the battlefield, imperative to show that the last year of blood and treasure that have gone into this war, the sacrifices by the Ukrainians, have been worth it. Some of the preening and posturing that occurred prior to the launch of the offensive, which is almost 2 months ago now, because the offensive launched on around June 4th, June 5th, was meant to ensure that when the Vilnius, Lithuania NATO summit of earlier this month kicked off, that there would be a great success to show. And what you've seen, in no fault to the Ukrainian army, no fault to the Ukrainian people, they have been played like pawns in this war against a much larger, much better prepared, much better resourced army in the Russian army. But they have been sacrificed thousands and thousands of lives to try and demonstrate success, to try and show progress. And I think those of us in the United States recall this is what happened in Iraq. This is what happened in Afghanistan. This is the reason why I resigned from my post in Afghanistan in 2009, because I knew that escalation of the war then was going to be futile. And that's exactly what happened. We just threw thousands of lives, condemned their families to the misery, a destruction of a country, to try and demonstrate progress for political ends. And I think it's important for people to remember there are 4 levels of warfare, right? There's the tactical, the operational, the strategic, and the political. And the political is on top. And so all these decisions that are made for political purposes, such as throwing, right?
You're a very courageous guy. This is a very strong assessment of what's going on there. So the politicians in Kyiv, not the military leadership, but the political leadership, which has got to mean President Zelensky and the people around him, were willing to sacrifice Ukrainian soldiers and civilians for a cause they knew they would lose. And he preened around Europe and even the United States promoting this vaunted spring offensive, knowing he was going to lose it. Part 1. Part 2, we know from the documents that were released allegedly by Jack Teixeira, the Massachusetts National Guardsman on Cape Cod, allegedly by him alone, documents the authenticity or accuracy of which the government has never publicly challenged, that the government itself, your former bosses in the Defense Department, knew that Ukraine would not prevail in the spring offensive and knew that Ukraine was losing the war. Nevertheless, President Zelensky did tell the world, the spring offensive is coming and we're going to triumph, and was willing to sacrifice innocent human beings to that end. Do I have that right?
Right. And not only that, it's the sacrifice, which itself is just unholy and immoral and just catastrophic. But you have the danger, the risk that puts Ukraine in. Yeah, so over the weekend, in the last couple of days, there have been some major stories, very important stories in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, right? And what they've been saying is that American officials knew this wasn't going to work. And so, as you said, we saw this in the release of the Discord papers, but even now, you have American officials confiding to the Times and to the Journal that we knew this wasn't going to work. What's even makes it even more horrifying, Judge, is that in an article I believe it was the Journal yesterday, an anonymous, they're always anonymous, right? An anonymous American official says, well, we'll see what happens when Ukraine uses the last of its reserves. Then we'll move on to what we do next. Then we'll be plan B or plan C or plan D or whatever we're at right now, right? But his saying of that, this idea that they're going to use the last of the reserves, this goes back to what I was just talking about before, about the strategic being subordinate to the political. It's a military axiom. This is what the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps teaches to its second lieutenants. You do not reinforce failure. So if you launch an attack and it's failing, you do not throw your reserves into that attack in some type of Hail Mary. Hope is not a strategy. That goes back to the Roman legions, I believe. Right. So this idea, right, that they are going to actually use up the rest of the Ukrainian army just to give a good show, just to say, well, we put our effort in, just to say that we tried, or that no one can point a finger at the White House or at Downing Street or wherever and say that you didn't do enough. Because I think that's what they're so scared about right now on the political end. Is this goes back now decades, right, to who lost China, who lost Ukraine. So the political posturing is going to get more and more people killed, and could put Ukraine in a position where it allows Russia to exploit a Ukrainian army collapse or exhaustion and provide Russia with a ability to have a knockout blow, so to say.